So as we're getting started, we'll let kind of the last people start coming in, but just wanted to thank you for joining us for the Caregiving Wisdom series. And we're so excited that Susan is going to be speaking to us today. It's certain this idea of people and living with dementia is something that really has been, we've kind of run into it a lot lately. So when we were introduced to Susan, it just really made sense to have her come in and speak on the Wisdom series. So we're so glad to have you with us, and we recognize that you have many things that you need to be doing. So we're very grateful that you're here and spending it with us. And we will work very hard to keep it within an hour. We'll have some time at the end for questions and answers. So make sure you do use the chat box as we're going through. If you have any questions that come up, by all means, put it down in the chat box and we will get back to that. But before we get started, as we always do, we'd like to begin with a prayer.
And this evening we have a special prayer, a prayer for dementia caregivers. And as we all get settled here tonight, imagine this vast ocean. Recognize that though we individually are caring for our loved ones, we're a part of something much bigger, and that we're bringing such incredible love and caring into that process. So yes, let's begin with prayer. Lord, it seems like only yesterday my loved one was so fiercely independent, so full of life and unwavering confidence. Now, though, the tide has changed. My loved one is changing, and ever so slowly I see them fading away. Give me the strength to walk with them on this journey, to accept the changes, and to adjust to the daily ebbs and flows I face. And when the waves of sadness and despair come crashing in on me, give me the understanding and courage I need to continue navigating what this is, a devastating disease. Replace my fears with hope. May I know that you, Lord, are present. It is you who are with us each and every step of the way. Use me, Lord. Help me. Help me to comfort my loved one when they become fearful. Fill us with laughter and joy at the tender moments we share. Lord, most of all, help me to keep our love alive. Fill me with certainty that no matter what change comes next, our love for one another can never be destroyed by this disease. Give us this deep and absolute peace. Help us, Lord, to know that it is you with us each and every step of the way. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Deb. That's a beautiful prayer. So let me introduce you to Susan. Susan Frick has a master's in social work, and she is a licensed social worker. And she has worked at the Rush Alzheimer's Disease Center since 1997. For those of you who are not familiar with the Rush Alzheimer's Disease Center, it's part of the Rush University Medical Center here in the Chicagoland area. It's a nationally ranked academic medical center. The Rush Alzheimer's Disease Center is one of 29 designated and funded centers by the National Institute on Aging. They have a mission to discover better ways to diagnose, treat, and prevent Alzheimer's and other dementias, and recognize that the disease takes its toll on families as well. Susan coordinates dementia-specific training programs for healthcare professionals and helps coordinate the Dementia Friendly and Dementia Friendly Initiatives here in Illinois. Susan is the director of Without Warning, which is a support program for individuals and families who live with the younger onset Alzheimer's, and the executive producer of a documentary created by this group that's now airing on PBS and Amazon Prime entitled Too Soon to Forget: The Journey of Younger Onset Alzheimer's Disease. Susan has worked with patients and families in the Rush Memory Clinic and with people involved with Rush's research studies. Susan has received her master's degree in social work from Loyola University of Chicago and has worked in the field of Alzheimer's disease since 1987. So Susan, welcome.
Thank you so much. And this is so impressive to have this many people from all over. So I am going to share my screen just a minute. And let me make
Yep, we're doing a little handoff here and we're having
on.
Susan share her screen.
Okay, does that all look good?
That looks good.
All right. Well,
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone. I am a social worker at the Rush Alzheimer's Disease Center in Chicago, and for quite some time, coming up on 24 years now, and even longer before that, have worked in this field and was also a long distance caregiver to both of my parents. Both my parents passed away from forms of dementia. My mom from Alzheimer's and my dad probably from vascular dementia. So I sure have seen it in both my professional and personal lives. So I know, as a caregiver, the burden is great to be caring for people with dementia. And so what I thought we'd do in just our time that we have today is I am part of, as they said, an initiative in Illinois. And I know a lot of you are not in Illinois, but I know other states are part of this initiative too. That's called Dementia Friends and Dementia Friendly. And it's really looking at how to help support people that are living with this, whether it be the person or be the family members, because I sure have heard over the years and could see it in my mom in particular, well, and dad too, how isolating this experience is. And so Dementia Friends is really looking at how we can help others know about dementia and be there to support people. So we're going to just kind of use this as a way to talk about the experience. I'm going to show a few clips from the documentary that I helped put together. So we're going to kind of do a bit of both. And if you have questions, you can sure type them into the chat, and we'll have some time at the very end to go through the questions. So let me just pull this up. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is the Dementia Friends program, and within that then be able to talk about the experience of dementia. And so let me just move this on. So Dementia Friends is really looking at how each of us can think about how we can be there for people who are living this experience. Now, some of you might be caregivers of someone with dementia, and so you are living that experience. But what we're hoping is this will be a tool to help others in the community know about it. I live in a suburb of Chicago, and I've been part of that suburb in Westmont, helping them to become a dementia-friendly recognized community. And across Illinois, we have 17 different neighborhoods and communities now that have been recognized. And so this is what I see this as is the first community awareness program that really looks at quality of life and really looks at how we can be there to support. And not so much that it's a disease, even though it is, and we need money for research, but this is really looking at what can each of us do to be there to support. So let me just show a little clip that talks about what Dementia Friends is.
Dementia. Do you know what it means? Perhaps you associate dementia with old age, or maybe it's a term that frightens you. Dementia is not a specific illness. It's a term that describes a wide range of symptoms associated with a decline in memory and thinking skills. These symptoms can become severe enough to affect someone's ability to perform everyday activities. Alzheimer's is a brain disease that causes symptoms of dementia. It accounts for 60 to 80% of all dementia cases. In fact, an estimated 5.4 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's disease. By 2050, the number of people aged 65 and older living with Alzheimer's disease is expected to increase to 13.8 million. It's likely you know someone or will encounter someone living with dementia in your community. At the bank, the grocery store, or a restaurant. Although advancing age is the greatest risk factor for developing Alzheimer's, even those who are younger can exhibit symptoms. Dementia affects each person differently. In the early stages, it may be difficult to recognize someone living with the disease because he or she is still independent and can engage in meaningful conversation. Potential signs include difficulty communicating, getting lost, becoming frustrated, exhibiting confusion, repeating words and phrases, poor judgment, and unusual or inappropriate behavior. Research shows that stigma surrounding dementia can lead to isolation for both those living with the disease as well as their family members. That's why it's so important to better understand dementia and how to help individuals continue to play a role in their community. When encountering a person with dementia, consider these tips. Treat the person with dignity and respect. Avoid talking past the person as if he or she isn't there. Be patient and supportive. Let the person know you're listening and trying to understand. Avoid criticizing or correcting. Offer comfort and reassurance. If he or she is having trouble communicating, reassure the individual that it's okay and encourage the person to continue. Living with value and purpose in the community is a human right. Communities must consider ways to make services more accessible for people living with dementia, just as they have made services more accessible to people with physical disabilities. Every segment of the community and every individual has a unique opportunity to make a significant difference in the lives of people living with dementia.
Hey, Mr. Fredrickson, it's Tuesday. Aren't you going to the store?
Yeah.
Come on, I'll walk with you.
To learn more about how you and others can help those living with dementia remain engaged in the community, view our short videos that provide guidance for specific professions at dementiafriendsusa.org.
So what that video is showing is really just how, as a community, we could be there to support people. And we'll talk about the Dementia Friends Initiative. I like how it encourages people to realize they can make a difference, which we haven't really talked about before, in encouraging others. So let me just put this beyond that. So we're going to talk a little bit about what they had in that clip. And if there's any questions on this, type them into the chat. But when you think about dementia, there's usually words that come to your mind, and you could kind of think about those individually for each of you. But there's a difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. Dementia, for some reason, I think, and I sure hear this all the time when I'm out talking to families or out in the community. I work in a lot of continuing care communities. People will often say, oh, my loved one the doctor said they just have dementia. They don't have Alzheimer's disease. I think for some reason, we're more comfortable with the word dementia, and it's not as scary in some ways as the word Alzheimer's. I think, often we're more scared of Alzheimer's disease. But really, dementia is just describing symptoms. It's saying that you've noticed a change in someone's cognitive ability, and that it's different than what they used to be able to do. And so then you want to figure out, what form of dementia is it? You just don't want to leave it as, I remember when both my grandmothers had memory problems too, a while back. And my grandmother in the 1980s, and she was probably in her 80s about that time, I remember the doctor saying to us, well, she's in her 80s, what do you expect? She's going to get confused. And that's not the case. There's a lot of people that live into their 80s, 90s, hundreds, and not having memory problems at all. It's not the normal part of aging. You want to figure out, you want to know, is it something that could be changed? Most times not, but there are those cases where it could be something metabolic going on, where there could maybe be some type of blockage that's causing some confusion. So you want to figure it out if it's something that could be changed. Most times it's going to be, as that little clip said, 60 to 80% of people with dementia, it's Alzheimer's disease. But there's other forms too. There's Lewy body, and some of you might be caregivers to people who are experiencing other forms of dementia. Lewy body, frontotemporal dementia, vascular dementia are all very common. Parkinson's, not everyone with Parkinson's gets confused, but there are some that do. And there's I think anywhere, I think around 60 to 80 different forms of dementia. So there's a lot, but these make up probably the most. So anytime you're noticing a change, and probably some of you are already past this point, you want to make sure you say, could it be something that could be changed? And so you want to have a good workup done just to make sure. And then you want to kind of think about, as you're having that workup done, is what the person's experiencing normal for, aging and having, we all have our, we'll get more forgetful as we get older. I sure feeling that. And I think COVID has probably made a lot of us feel that way too. We want to make sure it's significant. And these are the 10 warning signs that you often see from the Alzheimer's Association. So these are probably a little more leaning towards Alzheimer's disease instead of other forms of dementia. But again, that's the most common. And so what I always say to families and to the person too is you want to make sure that, and we want to see a pattern when someone comes into our clinic, that it's not just sporadic memory problems, that they're starting to have difficulties that are often noticeable, and they can't get through the day without having something occur. The common one for Alzheimer's disease is the top one, memory. And it's often short-term memory, that the person can't remember things that just happened. You might be having a conversation with the person and they don't remember. I remember I would come home from work. This was a long time ago when my mom was first experiencing problems, and there would be, like 15 phone calls from my mom with, hang-ups, variety of different ways that she would hang up. Sometimes I'd hear her talking. She wouldn't remember that she had already called, and there would be multiple phone calls. Or she didn't remember that she had told me a story, and that would happen again. So those kind of things. You want to see the long-term memory can stay intact for quite a while into the disease. As it progresses, that can become more impaired too. But at the beginning, people can really remember details of things from long ago, because that's already been stored into the brain and they're able to retrieve it. It's the problem of they aren't able to make the new memories all the time. And the storage issue becomes like they don't log it in there, so they're not able to pull it back out. And so you could have taken them out to dinner the night before or had a meal with them, and they don't remember it because that didn't get logged in there. Problems with planning and problem solving, problems with judgment, difficulty completing familiar tasks, things. My one grandmother was really good at making chocolate chip cookies. That was sort of what we knew her for. She was awesome with them. And then as her dementia progressed, things got left out, or things got put in that shouldn't probably have been into the cookies. And you could see that it was getting more difficult for her just to complete that task. I run a support group, as was mentioned, for people with young onset Alzheimer's disease. And we haven't been able to meet in person in a while, but we've been meeting on Zoom. But when we were still meeting in person, one woman talked about that she tried to make cookies, and I think they were chocolate chips, because she talked about she finished the whole cookies and realized the bag of chocolate chips was sitting there unopened. And she goes, I didn't put them in. She goes, I just completely forgot. I had another woman with young onset say that to her, having Alzheimer's disease felt like she had lost her autopilot, and all those things, that we do without even thinking about at times, she said was becoming problematic for her, which I thought was an interesting way to put it. And I've had people with Alzheimer's say to me that just getting through the day is exhausting for them, where we can get through the day and converse and do things, and we're not tired by it or as tired. I've had people with Alzheimer's say they just have to take naps more because just daily life stresses them out more than what it's done before. Confusion with time and place. People with dementia, and maybe some of you as caregivers are experiencing this, and this is hard. when they wake up in the middle of the night and they don't have a sense of what time it is, and they're kind of waking their partner saying, come on, let's get up. It's 2 a.m. And I had one woman who was caring for her husband. They were both in their 80s. And he would wake up in the middle of the night and kind of prod her and say, we gotta go. We're not home, we gotta go. And she told me that she would, which I was really a sweet way, what she did, she'd go, you're right, we gotta go. And that she would load him up in the car and she would drive around the block a couple times. And then she would pull into their house and go, we're here. And he'd go, oh, good. And she'd get out. But I talked with her about, listen, that's going to be exhausting. It was a lovely way to handle it from a communication standpoint, but she wasn't getting her sleep, and she was an older woman herself. So she wasn't able to maintain that for a long time. She had to get extra help. Some people have trouble with spatial, kind of figuring out where they are in relationship to other things. We all can do this at times, where you might be taking a drink and you miss your mouth. You might be walking through a door and you bang your elbow on the door frame. That's all judgment and perception issues. You might forget there's an extra step and miss the step. People with dementia can really have troubles with that, figuring out how to navigate their space. They might go to sit on a chair and sit on the arm because they miss it. Or they might look in the mirror and not recognize that that's them. They might see that as another person, and start chatting with the other person. Problems, we'll talk a bit about communication in a bit, but troubles thinking of those words, we all can do that. We all can have trouble thinking of the word we want to say. And it's often the nouns, and it's often the nouns for people with dementia too. For us, and not always, the word can come later, where you go, that's it, and you think of it later. For people with dementia, they often don't think of it if they don't think of it during that time, it often doesn't come later, because that takes holding that memory and thinking about it. Misplacing things. Again, we all can misplace things, but people with dementia can really misplace things. And I think as a caregiver, you have to really watch and make sure that they don't have access to things that are really important. Like maybe they don't have their social security card, their driver's license. If they're still carrying a purse or a wallet, maybe it's copies of things that are in that, so that they don't have the actual thing they could lose, because that becomes a huge problem. Keys, debit cards, credit cards, that all at some time becomes an issue that you have to kind of watch for. Change in personality. And I don't know how it is for you, if you're a caregiver for people with dementia, but often I hear families say they first noticed change in personality before they noticed change in memory, that the person just isn't as engaged, isn't as interactive with the family as they used to be, and people will notice this kind of change. And so these are all the things that often become problems for people with dementia, and mainly Alzheimer's. And they happen in varying order and at varying degrees. Some people maintain language skills for a long time, but lose other things. Some people, it's judgment is a problem. So it's all different, but you just want to keep these in mind as being the main problems. And again, all of us can exhibit some of these at times, but that's not dementia. You want to see kind of a pattern develop over time. And so communicating. And they touched on this a little bit in that clip. I think if you are a caregiver for someone with dementia, you really learn new ways to interact. People with dementia aren't always thinking in the same logic, reasoning. I just did a support group Tuesday morning for caregivers of people with young onset. And we got into a whole discussion about the drawbacks of trying to reason with somebody with dementia, because that's your normal go-to is trying to reason with someone, and it often doesn't work because they don't get it. They get defensive, you get defensive, and it escalates. And so what I often tell people is try to avoid the arguing as much as possible, which I know is not easy. You're tired, you're a caregiver, you can easily get sucked into arguing. But the more you do it, the more it makes the person on edge, and it makes it harder for you too. My dad was a minister, and even though he worked in education, so he didn't have a church. But always still, I knew him as preaching and doing things. He wasn't so good at therapeutic fibs with my mom with dementia. And my mom, because he was very logical and very reasoning, and my mom would constantly ask where her parents were. And my dad, before he had his dementia, would say things like, well, you were with them when they passed away. And then she would get all upset. And I kept saying, Dad, you got to stop that. You got to try to avoid meeting her with logic and reasoning. And so he came to me later and said, I came up with what to say. And he said, my grandparents are buried in Casey, Illinois, which is in central Illinois. And my grandpa was a minister too. And so what he said to my mom when she would ask where her parents were, he would say, well, last I heard they were in Casey. And he goes, I didn't say in the cemetery. I was like, good job, Dad. And it solved his problem of not wanting to lie to her, but it gave her an answer that made her feel okay. And I think that's what all of you as caregivers get by trial and error, probably figure out what are the best responses to support the person and to make them feel engaged, but to not stress them out. And I want to play a little clip that's from our documentary. And this is a couple, Laura and Pam, who talk about what dementia has done to their relationship. And so listen to what both of them are saying, because I think it probably relates to things you've experienced as a caregiver.
There are times when I feel like I'm secondary in this family, and that Laura has does all the decision making and scheduling, and there are a lot of times where I'm fully capable of it, but I defer to her, and to be honest, I resent that sometimes. It's really hard for me to take a back seat, and that's where I feel like I'm supposed to be, is in the back seat.
So there's times where I feel like, okay, I want to include her and I want to have her as part of this, but it's causing stress to have her as part of that decision, because there's things that have to get done, and I'll start pushing because we have to get a decision, and then it's just causing stress. So a lot of times I'm trying to pull away that stress that she's feeling by just taking care of it, just getting it done.
I don't know, this disease makes me feel like there's a black cloud right over here, and that at any moment it could turn to thunder and lightning, and I'll just crumble.
I was there when this was filmed, and that always gets me every time when Pam says there's a black cloud right here, and I could just crumble. I also think her comment of saying, I just feel like I'm supposed to be in the back seat, that's where I'm supposed to be. But then you can hear it from Laura's perspective as the caregiver saying, I want to include her, but if I include her, it just causes stress, and then everything is a mess. And so I just at some point start making the decisions separate of her, which is I think what happens as a caregiver. There is a time, and it's hard, I think, in particular when it's your spouse and you're used to doing things together, or you're used to that person making the decisions. It makes it really difficult, and figuring out that balance is never easy. I work with both people with dementia and their caregivers, so I see this angst all the time. And I've had people with dementia. I had one woman who always lost her purse, which I can't think of how many times I've sat my purse down and had to look for it, but she would really lose her purse. So her husband's response to this, which I can see why he did it, was he got rid of her purse. And she was saying to me, I'm so mad. I just want my purse back. I just want a purse. And so I talked with the husband about just get a purse, get something, and have things in there that she can carry, but not the important things, so that, and then just have a bunch of them. So if she misplaces one, you just can give her another. It was just important for her to be able to have it. And I think identity changes so much with this, that the more we can kind of help support the person, but still make it, I always say, and I'm not the only one saying this, but when I work with staff and families too, is set the person up to be successful, is figuring out what is the best, what I can do to make this work smoothly. Because it helps the person, but it also makes your life a lot easier as the caregiver. So in thinking about everyday tasks, what we hope with Dementia Friends and Dementia Friendly is that we start to create spaces where people feel comfortable to still be out and about and still be doing things. And I'm going to show a clip in a second of another, not couple, but a daughter and her father. She cared for her dad and going grocery shopping. And you can see how confused he looks in the process of grocery shopping. And I like this clip because I think it shows like what the poor daughter's going through, what Mike is going through, how maybe friends and family could have said, I'll be there, I'll go grocery shopping with you to make it easier. Springfield, which is the capital of Illinois, just recently became a dementia-friendly community. And a big part of their application was they were going to work with the local grocery store on education and supporting people. Because I think everything people with dementia do takes steps. Everything we do takes steps, of thinking out, what you had for lunch today and how did you make, if you had a sandwich or if you had something, how did you put all those things together? For people with dementia, that starts to become more difficult, and it gets more difficult over time. So watch this clip and watch Mike's face as they're grocery shopping, because I think you can really see it in his face.
My dad is 61. He was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. I'm terrible with dates, but it's about like 6-7 years ago now. And I'm his caretaker. I have my brother and my sister support me a little bit, but I'm the one who lives with him. I think it's one of the more difficult things that we do is go grocery shopping. It's kind of confusing. There's a lot of people, and it's easy for him to get lost. He wants to be independent, but he can't really do that. So getting him to like hold on to the cart or stay right there so I can grab something. I mean, you're constantly looking over your shoulder to make sure that he's not walking away or following a stranger.
And Katie told me when we were making this film that she used to grocery shop. They lived actually close to where I lived before I moved since. That we grocery shopped at the same store. I never saw him there though. And she never told me, but she said something happened. I don't know if maybe he had an accident or something occurred, and she was so embarrassed that she left her cart full of groceries and just left the store. And the manager of the store actually called her and said, please don't be embarrassed. Please come back. It's totally fine. And she said she was so upset that she has never went back to that store. This was a different store and they let us come in and film, and she had been shopping there. But I think to create space where it's okay, and if the people can be around, if things happen, or if you're out at a restaurant and something happens, that staff understands, and so we're working with businesses too to understand this. And part of the message of Dementia Friends is just probably things that as a caregiver, you probably know already, but the general public doesn't always. That dementia is not a normal part of aging. It's not that everybody gets confused as they get older, and that it's caused by diseases of the brain. And that often people with dementia can look really healthy. We often think in the clinic that when a couple comes in, the person with dementia sometimes looks healthier than the caregiver because you guys are all going through such stress. And so we see more physical stress in the caregivers sometimes. That dementia is a lot more than just the memory problems. You know, I think everybody thinks it's memory. Everybody talks about The Notebook, that's the movie, and will ask, you know, when my mom was going through this, they would always ask me, does she remember you anymore? That was always the question they'd ask. And she didn't, but there was so much more to it than that. And plus, that wasn't the main thing. We still had a great relationship, even with her dementia. I mean, she had her moments for sure, but we still had connection. That there can still be quality of life. And that the person, there's a lot more to the person than just the dementia. And you might think, well, why is this important to tell other people? And I think it's because relationships still matter, even with the dementia, still being connected, still feeling you're valued, that you can be contributing. I had one woman with dementia say to me that the moment she got the diagnosis, people started looking at her differently and didn't talk to her as much. They would talk to her husband, but not to her. And I think the more we can stay connected in ways, whatever it is, there's going to be decline for sure. But what this shows, this little graphic that they have, is showing that, you know, it's kind of looking at a brain as a bookcase, and a healthy brain, and as dementia progresses, that maybe facts, being accurate, being correct, thinking, complex thinking isn't there quite as much, but relationship is, emotions, love, connection is all still there. And we have to find ways to help people kind of tap into that. And that the person, as one of the messages says, is more than their dementia. They still can be connected. And so what Dementia Friends hopes, and as a caregiver, you're probably doing this already, but you know, others too, to think about what is one thing someone could do to help people with dementia in their lives. Whether it be, and I think about it, you know, I obviously do this in my professional life, but I think about it in my personal life. Whether it be I can stay in touch with someone that I know is experiencing dementia, whether I stand, especially now with COVID when we're so limited, stay in touch with that caregiver, or check in or drop things off. Whether it be I support dementia friendly efforts in my community. Whether it be you become a dementia friend, in which you all will today, and tell others about it. People can become a dementia friend by signing up online at the Dementia Friends USA website. And it only takes about 10 minutes to sign up online. And whether it be, and I think about this one for myself, that I'm just more patient when I'm out and about in the world. When I before COVID hit, I would commute down into Chicago, and I was on a couple buses and one train. And so there was often people who were fumbling with their Venture card or with money. And I would try to not roll my eyes or seem like I was impatient. I had one woman with dementia who could walk to a Starbucks in her community for a while. Now she can't. She said when she could go, it would make her nervous because everybody at coffee shops are in such fast pace. And she said she almost wished there was a fast line and a slow line at the Starbucks, so that, and not to knock Starbucks, it can be any place, that, I think just to allow people to have a little time to do things and to feel that it's okay. The same woman said that she would go to the library, and I bet if she had told anyone, they would have been helpful, but she got all disoriented at the library and just left because she didn't know what to do. And if maybe people knew and to keep an eye out for her when she would go in there, that's what we kind of hope for with this. And so just being more patient is often what people say. And I think our church hasn't opened up for services yet. It's all virtual, but several years back, we had a member of our church who he developed Alzheimer's, and he and his wife were longtime members of our church. And when we would have our coffee after service, there was just a group of us who would kind of keep an eye on him, and so if he decided to kind of head towards the door, which he did, we would gather him back up, and he was super friendly. And that gave his wife space to be able to visit and to be able to know he was kind of watched for. And I think, that's what we want is places that embrace someone, even when they maybe are doing things that are a little different than what they had done before. But when people sign up online to be a dementia friend, they actually mark off a little box of what's the thing you're going to think, and you're not, it's just a personal goal, so it's not that you're committing to it, but to think about how we can support people. And so this clip is also from the documentary about the importance of community.
Building a community that surrounds you takes time and commitment. It also takes compassion and understanding. What I've found to be one of the best ways to come together with a community is by sharing your experiences with them. Hopefully, by being open and honest, others will learn how to become more aware and accepting. And with time, you'll find your circle of support will begin to grow.
It makes us feel great to know that there's people that that are there to help, that are there to, jump in if we need. It's one of the most important things is we can't do this on our own.
Right.
We can't do this. This is way too big.
So how do we create a world that embraces kindness and caring? How do we create a place where people can be themselves and feel surrounded by love?
My philosophy is do your best and try to find love in other people and be kind.
The long road you travel with younger onset Alzheimer's disease will undoubtedly take many twists and turns. From the loneliness and isolation to the changes in relationships, the stress, the anger, guilt. It's not an easy path to follow. But finding community, whatever it may be, family, friends, neighbors, faith, support groups, and seeking professional care may take some of the weight you feel off your shoulders.
I can drop the ball whenever I want. Somehow they're there to pick it up. And so I don't fear anything, to tell you the truth. When they stand next to me, they know that anything can happen, and somehow I'd get through it.
I love that quote from Mike at the end saying, and he goofs the pronoun at one point, but saying that, he had dementia, he had Alzheimer's, saying he could drop the ball anytime and he knows that he's going to get through it because he had an immense family that helped care for him. And Dementia Friends, I think, is all about community. And that's what we kind of made that documentary about too, that we created. It was just that I think no matter, this isn't an easy experience, but the more you can have people around you, and the fact you're part of a community like this, and which I think there's been some blessings with COVID, one being how we've, I think, improved our social service outreach and these types of groups in virtual format. And you can have community even when we're all stuck at home. And that's what our documentary looked at, about 8 or 9 families from our support group, and looked at who and what was their circle of support, who was their community. And we really talked about how, trying to build that. If you don't have community around you, thinking of how are ways you can create that. And so we looked at, for each person, it was a varying services that they had and people around them. And I think knowing your resources too, and they're going to have this up for you later too, but these are, some general resources, and you've probably heard of most of these. The second one, the Alzheimer's Disease Education and Referral Center, is run by the National Institute on Health and Aging. They have wonderful free material that you can just go online and request, and they're really well put together. Actually, these manuals are manuals that we actually wrote at the Rush Alzheimer's Disease Center, and then we worked with them, and they put it together in such better format, and it's all free. The other services have free material too, but I really like the material from that NIH. And so I think knowing your resources and knowing where you can turn, and NIH has a whole slew of material on a variety of different topics in regards to Alzheimer's disease and a lot of other health issues, but they have in particular there on Alzheimer's disease. And this one, you might not need to know as much since it seems like we have people from across the whole country, but this is a resource in Illinois called the Illinois Cognitive Resources Network. And this is actually run through Rush, but it's on behalf of many organizations across Illinois, and probably other states have very similar programs too that you can kind of look up. And so I think that is it, that I'm going to stop screen sharing. And what we can do is, and so I hope that was kind of an overview. I know probably for some of you, your experience with dementia varies depending on where your person's at on this journey. But, if you have any questions or any comments, feel free to type them in the chat now.
Susan, thank you so much. And I think, wow, a lot to absorb, right? It's a journey and we're hearing a lot tonight. Yes, please, everyone put your questions in the chat box, comments. Susan, I have a question for you that I often hear, which is, when we have enough time to respond as a caregiver, it's certainly easier. But one of the things that's very challenging is when our loved ones who are frustrated have angry outbursts. And when you're in the midst of a lot of anger coming at you, what kinds of tips or recommendations or things might you offer?
Yeah, that's interesting because that was our topic in the caregiver group on Tuesday morning, was those when you're constantly just getting anger thrown at you, which sure often happens to the caregiver. And in particular to the caregiver that's there the most, seems to bear the brunt of the anger. I think and it's really, I know it's hard because I would often say to caregivers, find time for yourself. And I could see the look on their face like, seriously, one more thing I need to put on my list of things to do. But I think figuring out what are those things, and even if it's for a few seconds, that rejuvenates you. The fact that you're part of a faith-based group, whether it be a moment of prayer or whether it be reading something, whether it be, the group on Tuesday even talked about walking out into the garage and screaming, and just that kind of release for a moment. The thing you want to avoid, and the reason this came up in conversation, is one of our caregivers had a day where her spouse just kept calling and she was at work and she came home and the spouse was throwing a lot of anger her way and they got into a fight. And so she was saying, I totally know I was revved up. I shouldn't have been doing that. And we're all human. You're going to have moments where that happens, but to walk away if possible. I know it's not always, the safety issues can be, but I think if there's ways to take a break at times, if your person goes to bed earlier than you do, take some time just to do something that comforts you in those moments where you can get some break. I had one caregiver who, she said she would get home from work and her husband had young onset and she goes, I just needed a few moments to decompress. And she would lock herself in her bedroom and she said she could hear him like pacing outside the door, kind of like mumbling and saying things. But she was just like, I just need that moment to be able to switch gears, So I think knowing you're human, you're going to have times where you snap. And often the person won't remember those as much as what you do later on.
And yes, exactly. Give yourself the grace to forgive yourself for that and forgive them and let yourself move on at that point too.
Right. If journaling helps, whatever. Sorry.
Yeah. We have another question that came in from Kristen. Is there an average lifespan for a person with dementia or Alzheimer's? And she said, I know it's different for each person, but
it is. That what you'll often hear if you look material up is 8 to 12 years from diagnosis. But the problem with that is people can get diagnosed at different points along the way. I've had people that progress very quickly. I've had people that have had it 20 more years. So it's hard to know. When you're talking about people who are older, they can also have other ailments that could bring about decline. when you're talking about someone who, I work a lot with people who are younger, sometimes they can progress fast or slow. It's hard to know. So they say roughly 8 to 12 years, but that can be very.
Well, and Susan, Cricket did make a comment who said, wow, that's me, that my dad yells at me daily. And I think a lot of us experience that, you know, throughout. Yeah. And I think your suggestions, if you can, just to walk away, you know, sometimes I count, I don't even make it to 10. I count to 3 and walk away. So I think it's nice, like you said, to be in community, and Cricket, we're so glad you're here because this is part of that community, right? And support. Kim
I apologize, my dogs are barking.
Oh, that's okay. They want to share a few things with us here too. So Kim T has a question. Isn't there a relationship between anxiety and dementia? We found that by treating anxiety, it reduces the anger directed at others, especially loved ones. What do you think, Susan?
Yeah, no, often the most common behavior for people with dementia is anxiety. And I think it comes about because they know like things don't feel right. And so it can come out in different ways, pacing, hand wringing, rocking, just very anxious. And, you know, we all know, like, if we feel anxious, that's an awful feeling, you know, to be in that space all the time. And it's not that it's always that way, but I think you can, like, if people are anxious or stressed, it's going to make them more confused. So talking with your doctor, whoever the doctor is for the person, also looking though at how you relate with that person, or how people are, not just you, but how other people, if we're putting undue expectations on the person, you know, like, I told you that, or, you know, why can't you get these things together? Or, you know, that kind of thing, that's going to make them more anxious and more stressed too. So I think there's things we can do in how we relate and what the world set up. But also sometimes you might need medication to take that edge off.
Yeah.
You know, so you want to balance it.
Yeah. That's a good thought there. Lori had a question. She said, does the Dementia Friendly website show if there's a group in my area, or there's a way to start it in her area?
So there's 2 websites you can check out. There's Dementia Friendly America, which I'm not sure if it's exactly that website, but if you Google it, it'll come up, or Dementia Friends. So for Dementia Friendly, there is a page on the website that will show the different towns across the United States that have become dementia friendly. If there's not one in your area, you sure can reach out to the national contact. And you can also reach out to me, even if you're not in Illinois. I can get you connected with the right person, because I am the lead person for Dementia Friendly and Dementia Friends for Illinois, but I can get you connected to the people for other states.
Thank you.
I was actually going to share here for everyone some of these as well, if Susan, you want to reference.
Yeah. So these are websites that actually, not all of them, but a lot of them I've put together. The Without Warning is our website for the support group. It's having a little technical issues right now. So right now our video content is not working because GoDaddy switched the site. So we're working on getting it changed, but it's still there and we'll get it corrected. The Dementia Leaders is actually a website for healthcare workers. I do a lot of training with healthcare workers. And the Toolkit Project is for people who run support groups. So the second to last one is for the documentary, which is actually, if you have Amazon Prime, you can see it for free. It's on Amazon Prime. You can also rent it for not that much. It's on PBS, but on very minimal stations right now. And that's almost running out. We've been on there 3 years. And then the Dementia Friends USA is where you could, you know, you're now considered a dementia friend, but you could go and encourage other people to sign up. Yeah. And, you know, if you're a social media person, you can post it. You became a dementia friend, and
that's cool.
You're doing it.
And Susan, you have so many resources for us. And just to remind everyone, I'm going to go back one slide. The resources that you mentioned, Susan, and the ones that you just provided us, just to let everyone know, this video is obviously being recorded, our time together tonight, and it will be up on our website. And we'll show you in just a minute how to go back and reference all of these, because Susan, you've provided us with so much amazing information. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
And so I think as we're wrapping up, we're coming to this close. If more questions come in, we can certainly handle them, but we want to make you aware of what's coming up next. And if these two faces look familiar, that's because it's us. So coming March 17th, for those of you who have the Caregiver Companion, the book that Kelly and I wrote together, A Christ-Centered Journal to Nourish Your Soul, we're going to take a chapter out of that journal. And I think this is one that probably everyone can relate to. Caregiving in survival mode. That is no way to live. And we're really going to dive deep into that. It's chapter 1 for those of you who have the book. And if you don't have the book, we'll let you know where you can go to find it. But we're going to do a deep dive together. Also, because it is Lent, Kelly and I did a live Way of the Cross for the caregivers. Kelly, wasn't it an amazing time together?
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. So we put it up on our YouTube channel.
And it's there for you. It's there for you to go and please share any of your churches that would like to be able to share this out in the community. It's yours. We want people to use it. We also have an ebook. It's a 27-page ebook called Your Lenten Journey. You simply go to, and again, we'll make this link available to you, but it's a bit.ly link, Lenten Journey for Caregivers. And
I put that into the chat box, so you can actually just click on it. You won't lose, our connection on Zoom, but you can click on that and you can have it to download later too. So making it easy.
And just to kind of, you do so much selflessly that we want to make sure that we give something to you to accompany during Lent. And we mentioned the Caregiver's Companion. So it is springtime and I love the blue flowers here. It's a gift filled with blessings. We do want to make sure that you know that we have a lot of resources out there for you on our website. And I think from this point forward, I see there's a couple of additional comments in the chat box. Kelly, you want to take one of those?
Just everybody saying thank you to Susan and just commenting that the Lenten book is beautiful too. So yeah, that's absolutely a wonderful resource for caregivers. It just kind of slows you down a little bit during the season of Lent. And it's just a nice way, as Susan was talking about, sometimes you need to pull back a little bit, and that Lenten resource is a wonderful way to do that. As is the Stations of the Cross. Again, it's just meditations on Christ's Passion, from kind of tying our caregiving journey along with Christ's Passion. So we thank you all for joining us today.
And as you go to the Nourish for Caregiver website, you'll see that the Wisdom series is up on the top navigation bar. If you go there, you'll be able to see and listen to Susan again, to catch all the pieces of information that, Susan, we thank you for sharing tonight, as well as those links. So please, check back on the website. The video will be out there, as well as all of our past presenters. You can come back and check and listen in.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
We're getting a lot of thank you, Susan. It was very helpful. Thank you for your loving way of sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for interspersing some real life experiences of your own and the caregivers that you work with. And thank you so much. That just really made it very, very informative. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Have a wonderful night, everybody. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yep. Sounds good. Good night, everyone.